Everyone. I am going to do a little tutorial for you. Well, not so little. It'll actually probably take a little while, but why not? So this is going to be our Dresden sun for the little farm block of the month that I'm doing for the Tilda Club. So what I'm doing, I've got applique paper. This is the shiny side. This is the sticky side. And so I want the sticky side up when I'm tracing my pattern because it's going to be reversed. So just keep that in mind that I'm drawing on the sticky side, not on the right side. So what I'm doing is tracing the curved edge of my Dresden center, the sun center, and I'm just tracing the curved edge. And I'm not going to use the whole piece for the applique because the sun gets sewn in on the side of the block. So these straight sides will get sewn into the side of the block. So there's no need to trace those. The only applique part we're going to have is that curved part. So I'm just tracing the curve. And then I'm just going to sketch out about 3/8 of an inch or so, or you could go up to a 1/2 inch. I'm just not going to use that whole big piece of applique paper. I'm just going to use that curved edge to applique the sun. So it's not going to be a big stiff sun because the whole piece isn't going to be in there. It's just going to be that edge of that curve. So I went ahead and traced that. The next thing I'm going to do is cut out the blade template. And what I do with templates when I'm cutting fabric is I just cut them straight out of the paper. I don't bother to use template plastic. So I cut them out of the paper and then I just tape them straight to my rotary cutting ruler. That way I can just rotary cut all of my templates. This works with most things that are that have straight edges. So it won't work with, curved things, obviously, but it'll work with things that have straight edges. So that's the way I always do my templates. So I'm just going to take this and I'm going to tape it to the wrong side of my ruler. I always tape it on an edge that is curved or that is one of the angled edges. I don't know if you can hear my dogs barking, but please excuse them. Doesn't seem to matter what I do. If I'm filming, they always want to bark. So let's see. Do I have a piece of tape here? I don't have any regular tape, so I'm going to use double-sided tape. I do have some, but I don't know where it's at right now. So double-sided tape works great. So we'll just do that. Got a couple pieces on there. And then I'm just going to tape it so it's straight along the edge of my ruler. So when I go to cut my blades, I'll just cut a strip that's wide enough for that. And I will just use the ruler to cut those edges. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and cut out this curve and get some fabric, and then I'll be right back to continue the tutorial. Okay, so I've got all of my fabric ready to go. And I just wanted to reiterate how I did this. So I drew on the sticky side of my applique paper, and I just did 1/4 to a 1/2 inch. It doesn't have to be perfect. The only thing that has to be perfect is that first curve that you traced. So where I traced that, I wanted to be sure that you knew, I traced that on where the seam line is, not on the outside. The outside is your seam allowance. You want to trace the inside. That's your seam line. So this is the way it's going to go onto the fabric. I went ahead and cut my fabric from the template. This is the sticky side that I drew on. And this is going to go here where 1/4 of an inch in where your seam line is. So you want to line it up just like this, in 1/4 of an inch from each corner or each straight side, and then 1/4 of an inch from your edge, because you're going to use this to turn your edge for your applique. So I'm going to go ahead and press this on so it doesn't get lost. And just make sure it's placed properly. Now I'm having to redo it since I moved it. And then I cut 2 strips of my yellow fabric. I might as well talk while I'm pressing here. I cut 2 strips of my yellow fabric for the raise. I cut them 7 inches wide. And I've already cut out the first ones. I've decided to use this gorgeous mustard wild garden from Chic Escape for this quarter Dresden that I'm making for the sun, for the little farm bomb. Okay, so this is how it's going to come out. You're 1/4 of an inch from each edge and then 1/4 of an inch from the rounded edge. And what you're going to do is go ahead and turn these with your fabric glue. I don't have that right here in front of me, but I'll do that in a minute and show you after we get everything else cut. And after we get everything sewn, then I'll show you how we're going to applique that. But anyway, that's the reason that you have your curve here, is because you're going to use that to turn your edges under. Those of you that are in Tilda might not have seen the applique paper, because I've been using this for the BOM for Liberty, but this is applique paper. What it does is it irons on. You can use it to applique, and then when you wash your quilt, it just turns into fibers and it just disappears. So you won't have any stiffness in your quilt after you wash it. So I really, really love applique paper. It's something new to me, and I've been really enjoying using it. Okay, so this is our 7-inch wide strip, and this is our blade template. And I've just taped it along one of the angled sides. And I'm just going to flip my ruler around. And I needed 3 of one fabric, so I'm doing that out of the Chic Escape, and I've already got those cut. And I need 4 of the other fabric, so we're going to use this fabric. So I have it on this side. What you could do if you wanted to is print 2 of these and put one on one angle and one on the other. But I just flip my ruler over. It doesn't hurt anything to use your ruler on the wrong side. It might be a little bit slipperier on the top side. Slipperier, is that a word? On the top side, but if you're careful, you'll be fine. And it's only 4 pieces, so it's not going to be a big deal. So I'm just flipping it over onto the top side so that I can line it up again. Get this paper out of the way. And basically, I'm just cutting the angles. I'm not worrying about the ends at this point. Looks like I've got a little nick in my blade. Okay, and then just flip it one more time. I'm going to do this just 2 more times. We just need 4 blades. And it's pretty obvious which way you need to turn it when you're doing this. Okay, so we've got our 4 blades of that fabric. So now what I'm going to do is just take all of these pieces. I don't know if I want to do quite that many. That'll be 7 layers. I'll do these ones first, and then I'll do the Chic Escape fabrics. So all of these pieces are exactly the same, but they're not cut right for the blade, right? So I'm going to take my template off of my ruler and just put it onto the fabric that I just cut. It's got that double-sided tape on it. That actually worked out pretty well. Kind of glad I couldn't find my other tape. Just want to make sure that I have enough on the bottom edge to be able to cut. There we go. Okay. So you can either use scissors or your rotary cutter if you feel comfortable cutting freehand with your rotary cutter. I do it all the time. But if you don't, then grab some scissors and you can trim off your edges of your blades this way. And this one is straight, so I'm going to go ahead and use my ruler there. The one on the bottom is a little bit curved, so I didn't want to use a ruler there, but the one on the top is straight. There, so the blade is all cut just the right size. We're going to do the same thing for the other blades. Get them lined up perfectly. Okay, so we're all cut nicely. Now, what you're going to do is take your blades to your sewing machine. You're going to turn this long edge, I mean, not the long edge, but the wider edge of the wedge. And you're going to line up the corners and fold it like this. And you'll sew 1/4 of an inch along that edge. If you all have made Dresdens before, I'm sure you've done this, but for those of you who are new to quilting, you might not have done this before. I'm going to try to make this super easy because some people are afraid of doing Dresdens, and there's really no reason to be. They're super easy. So the only thing with Dresdens is they are a little, boy, I don't have any other pins in here. I must have used them all. There's one. They are a little squidgy on the edges because they're on the bias. They're cut on the bias. So sometimes when you sew them together, your Dresden will come out a little bit too wide, but it's not a big deal. All you have to do is just make your seams a little bit wider if it doesn't come out exactly right the first time. So I'm going to go ahead and go over to my sewing machine. All of my pins are over there for some reason. And I'll see you there in just a second. Okay, so got the sewing machine set up. We're going to use 2 different kinds of sewing machines today. My favorite sewing machine is my Juki, my straight stitch machine. But it does not have, it's just straight stitch. So it doesn't have a, doesn't have any kind of zigzag stitch. So what we're going to use to applique, since I decided I'd show you how to machine applique, it doesn't have a blind hem stitches, which is what I'm going to use to applique the Dresden down. So I'm just sewing a 1/4 inch seam right along that edge. I always start at the folded edge on these. And I'm just chain stitching them. We also have another tutorial on the website, on the forum, where Dina has taught you how to applique and make Dresden blocks. It's called the Sea Flower block, I think. Oh my goodness, I've forgotten now, but I think it's Sea Flower is what she called it because she used the cotton beach fabric for that. So if you go and look on the forum at the Tilda projects, you should find the tutorial there. It's a video tutorial, actually a class that Dina did for us on one Saturday. So you can look at that. If you want to do hand applique, that's the perfect place to look to do that because I'm going to show you how to machine applique these. I love to hand applique, and I have a plan in mind to do some more applique soon, but I thought you guys might like a machine applique tutorial for this. So, oops, just unthreaded my machine. Get it rethreaded so that I don't. There we go. Okay. Put all these pins away. Oh my goodness, I've got pins everywhere over here. Okay. So we'll go back over to the cutting table. So that's where my iron is. Take these little guys apart. And what we'll do is just flip these inside out. And oh, actually, first thing you want to do is trim that corner just a little bit, that folded corner, because that'll help your points get pointier. Don't cut too close to the thread. And what I do is I finger press these open, these seams, and then I flip the point. This is just thread. And I try to line it up as straight as possible. And then I press it. We have a cute little pointy Dresden blade. This would be the perfect place to use your little seam roller that I sent out a couple years ago. Was it a couple years ago already? Oh my goodness. In the Tilda box. One of the first things I ever sent, actually. That fingernails work too. Okay, I'm not going to make you watch me press all of these. I'll be right back. Okay, so they're all pressed and I've lined them up on my ruler. I always find it easier to carry things over to my sewing machine if I put them on my ruler. So that's what I've done. And what I'm going to do is sew 2 at a time. And this helps me keep them in order as well, because sometimes I will get off and I'll end up with 2 of the same ones together or something. Anyway, so this is the way that I'm going to do it. I'm going to go ahead and sew 2, 2, 2, and then sew the last one onto the end and then sew those together. So I'll go to the sewing machine and do that. So we always start from the folded edge when we are sewing these. Otherwise, they could get off kilter and not be lined up properly at the end that's the most important. This side doesn't matter as much because it's going to be covered by the center, so that doesn't matter. So the part that matters is the part that's folded here at the top. I pin everything. So I like to pin the beginning and the end, especially when you're working with a bias piece. And then just be careful not to stretch it as you go, and use a real 1/4 inch. Some people say use a scant 1/4 inch, and yes, I do that when I am doing a regular pieced block, but because this block is biased, it will stretch a bit, so you want a full 1/4 inch seam. And I normally would chain piece these, but I just wanted to show you that it comes out nice and straight. So I'll go ahead and chain piece these, the others here. And actually, in this case, I am going to backstitch 1 or 2 stitches. I didn't on the first one, but I don't like those. I don't like that fold to come apart at the end. It's been a little while since I sewed a Dresden, so I forgot that little tip. And I didn't do it again. Oh well. I'll just have to be extra careful that I don't pull it apart. Okay. Actually, I want this one to go in the center because it's got more flowers on it. Being a little fussy about that. I have to admit, this fabric, this mustard wild garden fabric from Chic Escape, I am not a huge yellow fan normally, but there's just something about that print that I love. It's so beautiful. I don't know if it's a combination of colors she used in the flowers or what it is, but I love it. Okay. And I just keep laying them out to make sure that I've got them going the way that I want them, because I have sewn the wrong blades together before in Dresden's. So I just always do a reality check. Okay, last one. These are all sewn together. The other good thing about having my 12.5-inch ruler here is that this is a 12.5-inch block. So if I line this up along the edges, I can see if it's going to fit on the block. And once it's pressed, it looks like it's going to be just right. So that's good. If this came out a little bit too big, you would want to make your seams a little bit wider, and that would make it come out nice and square. As you can see, I don't know if you can see actually. Let me move this back a little bit and point it this direction. It goes along a straight side here and along the straight side over here. And once it's pressed, it should be just right. It should fit really well. So looks good. Okay. Okay, so I have pressed our blades, and this is a 12.5-inch background piece. What you want to do when you lay out your blades is make sure that you have at least 1/4 of an inch on each side, because when you sew that block into your quilt, you don't want to cut off your points of your blades. So just make sure that you have 1/4 of an inch on each side. And what you could do, I just so happened I had a strip that was 12.5 exactly wide, and I don't have anything bigger of this background. So you're going to do a blue background for your sky, but I'm so in love with this that I think I'm actually going to make myself a table runner. So I decided I didn't want a blue table runner. I wanted to have a cream background. So that's why I'm using a cream background. But you will have a blue background. So what you want to do is, or what you might want to do, since we're appliquing onto this, and sometimes applique shrinks your block a little bit, you might want to go ahead and cut your block, your background piece 13 or 13.5, and then you'll have plenty to trim off and make it exactly 12.5. So anyway, this is what I have. So this is what I'm using. So just make sure that you have at least 1/4 of an inch on each side, so that when you sew it into your piece, you're not losing your points on your Dresden. The other thing is, as you can see, this is just the tiniest smidge, not even 1/8 of an inch, too short right here, and just a tiny smidge too long over here. That's not a big deal. This is all going to go into a seam allowance, and you're not even going to know about it. So it's totally fine just like it is. What I'm going to do is use a little bit of glue-based glue, which I love for doing applique. You don't need very much. You only need a dot here and there. And so I'm just going to put a couple of dots of glue on this and press it down. It's once you heat it with your iron, it stays really well, but it's also really easy to then pull off of the background once you're done appliquing. So that's really nice. And it's water soluble, so it comes out when you wash. So there's no reason not to use it and make your life easy. So I've just used a little bit of glue based on that, and I'm going to go ahead and move this over to my iron and press it so that it stays down. So because you sewed these, they're all turned under. There's no raw edges, which is really nice. The only place you have a raw edge is here. And that's going to be covered by your center. Oh my goodness, look how pretty that is. I love it. Okay. Let me close up this for a minute. Now this is our piece that we put the applique paper on. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn those edges, and I'm going to use a little bit of fabric glue to do that. So I just put some fabric glue along. You can either put it right on your fabric or you can put it on the applique paper. And I just roll it with my fingers and I let it do its own, what do you want to call it? Gathering. So it'll gather right around that curved edge. And normally I don't get any points. And this is a pretty easy, not super curvy curve. So it should go pretty easily for you. And when I just roll it like that and then hold it down so the glue will catch, takes a second for the glue to dry. Usually the place you get a fold is right here at the end where you finished your last glue bit. So sometimes you have to pull that up a little bit and keep it from getting a point right there. Okay. I have a couple little places where it wants to come up, so I'm just going to push those back down, put a little extra glue there. Okay, so that's a nice little curve. It makes doing your curve so much easier when you do it this way. It's really awesome. Okay, so then you just line up your straight edges along the edge of your block, and you should have no problem with that covering all of your ends of your blades. And so it's just right. And I am going to put a little bit more glue base just along that edge of the curve. It's not coming out. That's the reason I'm doing that. I'm almost out of this glue. You can tell I like it because it's almost gone. So I just put a couple of little dots, and you can see they're very small dots. You don't need a lot of glue at all. A little goes a long way with this stuff. I'll line it back up, press it down, and then I'll give it a little press with my iron. Okay, so as you can see, it's not coming off that background, even though it's only got that tiny little bit of glue on it. Okay, so it's ready to applique. So you can hand applique it if you like. So you would probably, what I would do is, well, you definitely would need to. You will applique along this curved edge, and then you'll applique each of the blades. But what I'm going to do is show you how to do this by machine. So I'm going to turn the camera off for just a minute, move my camera over so that you can see my other sewing machine, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I have my machine set up for the blind hem stitch. It looks like a straight stitch with a side stitch, a straight stitch with a side stitch, a straight stitch with a side stitch. So you will have to look in your machine manual to find that stitch if you want to use the same stitch. You can also use a zigzag stitch, and you also need to decide what kind of thread you'd like to use. I could use a mustard colored thread and then it would blend. But what I'm using is a invisible thread with just white in my bobbin. So I've got invisible thread on the top and white in the bobbin. And you also will need to mess with your tension on your machine, because the invisible thread is weird when it comes to tension. So just be aware of that. And the other thing is I cannot find the sock that goes over my invisible thread. There's a little, you guys have probably seen it and didn't, maybe if you've never used invisible thread, didn't know what it was for, but there's a little like mesh thing that usually comes with your machine, and it goes over your invisible thread to keep it from coming off the spool too quickly. So I don't have one of those, so I might get a knot in my thread, but we'll hope that we can go along here. So the straight stitch goes along the edge of your applique, and then the side stitch goes in to grab your fabric, and that's how it appliques. So I know it's, you can't see it because I'm using invisible thread, but that's what's happening here. So I'm going along the edge of the applique, and then the side stitch is grabbing the fabric. And I just go really slow so that I don't make a mistake. And it's really not that hard. I use an open toe foot, so presser foot, so that I can see where my needle is grabbing. And it's going to make a squeaky noise. It always does that when I'm using invisible thread. You probably can't even hear the machine. I know my microphone does a good job of filtering it, but if you do hear a squeak, that's what it is. It's the invisible thread making noise. Because it is polyurethane, so it's got, which I think it is, maybe it's nylon. Anyway, whatever it is, it's plasticky, so it makes a squeaky noise when it goes through my machine. Hopefully it's not making too much noise for you guys. But this is a lot faster than doing it by hand. I love hand applique, and I'm actually pretty fast at it. So this would probably maybe take me, oh, maybe an hour or so to applique this whole block. So that wouldn't be a problem for me. But I know people are wanting to use their machines. And if you have a nice machine that has all the nice stitches, it's always good to be able to use those. Okay, and I'm not going to cut with my machine. The invisible thread likes to pull back through my needle, so when I do that, so I'm just going to cut it with my side cutter. Okay. So I know you probably can't see this. Oh yeah, there, I got it, had it catch the light. So you can see that that's the invisible thread, but if it's not catching the light, you can't see it at all. It's completely invisible, so that's nice. Now I'm just going to show you a couple of the blades, because there are a couple of tricks when you're doing these, and I always like to make sure that my needle is lined up perfectly before I start sewing. Oh, and it was to the side, so gotta put it back. There we go. Okay. So I ended up stopping on the side stitch instead of on the straight stitch. Okay. So if you count, did I just, no, okay. I thought the thread broke, but it didn't. That's how invisible it is. I can't see it. Oh, it did. It did break. Okay, hold on just a sec. I knew it was going to happen eventually because this invisible thread likes to break on me. Usually right after you stop and start again is when it happens. And I can't see it to thread the needle. It really is invisible. Try this again. Oh, now it's giving me a hard time. Well, As you can see, everyone, this is what happens sometimes. Your machine is picky. My machine is picky about the thread, especially. It's caught underneath. Oh, that should be better. Should have checked it when it broke. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so if you count the stitches to the side stitch, so it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It's actually 4 up and down motions, but it's only 2 forward motions. So when you get to a place where you're going to be at a point, 1, 2. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my needle down and I'm going to turn it because I want that side stitch to go into my point. And that's just the way to keep your point down when you're doing this. So that's one of the tricks I wanted to show you. Want to make sure when I get up to the point that that side stitch goes into the point. And then when you get down to an inner point, you want to do the opposite. You want it to go side and then stop down and then turn and then side. So it just takes a couple of tries and you'll get that really, really well. It's not a big deal at all. So when I get close to the point, 2, 2, 3, and 2, side goes into the point. Then I'm going to turn it. And actually, I need one more stitch there. Okay. And then I'm going to turn it. And now I'm going so that the point is horizontal. And it goes into the point and then out. And then I'll turn again and go along the side. And then I'll show you an inner corner one more time. Okay, here, I went there. Okay, stop, down, and then turn. And then it'll go sideways, and then you can continue on. Because you don't want that last sideways stitch to go into your inner point either, because that'll just split open your seam there. So. And that's it. That's the whole block. So I'm not going to finish it all as we're here on the video, but I just wanted to show you how to do that. And the pattern is in the forum for you guys. Okay, thanks. Bye.